So we've already upset the colonists over this proclamation of 1763 and this Sugar Act. And so the British now are going to pass two more laws that are going to continue the aggravation between American colonists and the Parliament. So the next subtopic, which some of you wrote down yesterday, are two more unpopular laws by Parliament. Both of these were incredibly unpopular with the colonists. The first one was called the Currency Act of 1764. The Currency Act of 1764. And this had to do with how colonists were going to pay their taxes. Okay, once they were levied, how they were going to pay. How do I pay my taxes, Emily, do you think? I tell you, this tax ticks me off. I have to write a check April 15th. I just gave it up. So how do I do it? I write a check. Okay, that would be the normal way to pay taxes. What might be another way to pay taxes these days if you didn't write a check?
Usually there's like a tax on food, like food that you buy here like at the stores. So usually there's like
That's true, but I'm talking about, like when I write, okay, I owe $7,000 to the government in April after I fill out my tax forms. I can write them a check, or what else, how else could I pay them today? Okay, it's okay, Meg?
an automatic withdrawal.
Yeah, automatic withdrawal. I could give them my checking account number, or maybe if I had a debit card, you could do it that way. How wouldn't I probably pay them? With cash. Now this is where this gets weird, because back in those days, did they have checking accounts? No. Did they have debit cards? No. They had paper money, which we kind of see as cash, and they had what else? How else did they pay? Gold and silver. Okay? And what the Currency Act of 1764 did is it forbid the American colonists to pay their taxes with paper money, which means they had to pay their taxes with gold and silver, which they didn't want to do. Okay? It's just like in today's world, I wouldn't want to pay my taxes in cash, would I? Because I'm thinking to myself, geez, I can write a check or I can put it on my debit card, it's much more convenient, and they want me to pay in cash. So what do? Do I, $7,000 and $1,000 bills or $100 bills or quarters? Now, if it was me, as ornery as I am, I might pay in dimes, just to kind of, whatever. But anyway, but that's the whole point. It's very inconvenient. And these colonists were required to pay all their taxes in gold or silver, and they wanted to hang on to that. So that really antagonized them. Now, which group of people would be most upset with having to pay taxes in gold and silver? Who would be most inconvenienced?
The farmer?
No, because they're gonna sell their stuff to somebody else. It's a lot bigger entity.
Oh,
Merchants. The merchants were the most upset because now they have to pay their taxes in gold and silver, and they didn't want to do that. So it was a very antagonistic law that colonists seen as just a zinger. Let's zing them a little bit more, okay? Let's get them prepped up for more to come. Well, not long after they passed the Currency Act of 1764, which really irritated the colonists, they then came back with the Quartering Act of 1765. The Quartering Act of 1765. Anybody want to guess what that might have been all about? Quartering Act. What does quartering mean? That's a good guess. That's a good guess. Not right. That's right. What happened is the American colonists were told that they would not only provide shelter in their homes for British troops that were stationed in America, that also supply them and feed them. So can you imagine all of a sudden in the at-home home, somebody says, you're going to have to start housing all of these people that you don't particularly care for. They probably haven't showered in 3 weeks. They don't really like you. Do you think the British soldiers were fond of the American colonists? No. And all of a sudden now you're forced to put those people in your homes, pay for their supplies, and feed them. Well, that was incredibly antagonistic. And it really irritated the American colonists. So what the British is doing here is they're really just kind of setting themselves up for just rebellion. And that's what this whole thing's going to come to. Okay? Any questions on that subtopic? Okay, well that'll take us to the next subtopic, which is continual aggravation, and maybe the most controversial to this point, and that was the Stamp Act of 1765. The Stamp Act of 1765. Now Maria's only been in school, how many days did you start, what day did you start? You start the same day we did, 17?
14.
14th, they start, so if you're feeling sorry for yourself, start so early, she started 14. She went to 3 days of school and headed for the eclipse, so I'm not sure how much history. Had you had any lectures in history yet?
No.
But what they make her do is do it online when she's gone. Does that sound familiar? Okay, the Stamp Act of 1765. So in the midst of this colonial agitation over the passage of the previous acts, all of a sudden Parliament adopts an act called the Stamp Act of 1765. This also was a direct tax in which the duty or tax would be placed on items would go directly back to the British Parliament. Similar to the Sugar Act, only the Sugar Act was for molasses, sugar, and items either exported or imported into the country from countries outside the empire. This was the same type of thing. Now the Stamp Act affected all colonists, okay? Some of these other acts didn't necessarily affect everyone, but the Stamp Act would be the first act that would affect all the colonists. Anybody know what the tax levied was on? What did they levy a tax on?
Paper products?
Paper licenses of all kind. Yep, paper licenses of all kind. And I'm going to give you 5 examples. This is not limited to everything, but 5 good examples of what they put a tax on. Well, what you want to guess one?
Sam.
What?
Sam.
Well, kind of.
Paper products imported from Britain.
Well, not so much that. And I'm not saying those aren't right, but I'm in the 5 I'm talking about. First of all, you had to pay a tax on newspapers. Newspapers paid a tax. The other day I put these in the paper to tell everybody about our garage sale and golf tournament. What are those?
Oh, yeah.
Advertisements. Advertisements had to also be taxed. Advertisements. Some of these don't seem like a big deal now because we're in a different world. All legal documents paid a tax, such as deeds to lands, mortgages on properties. Any legal document had to bear a tax stamp to show that the tax was paid. Now this would be interesting in today's world. You know what else got taxed? College diplomas. So once you earned your college diploma, they put a tax on it.
So like after you getting in like thousands of dollars in debt for college, they make you pay them money just to get a diploma?
That's right.
Wow.
How you like that? Yeah, that's true though. Now, you boys, what do you do on football trips to pass the time? This is what we used to do. You guys get on your damn phones and everything else now. What did I do when I was a pastime on a bus trip? Before I had a cell phone and video games and all that. Well, we did, but it's illegal now. But anyway, close? Who said board games? I mean, kind of tough to play a board game on a bus, but what? Play cards. Well, they even put tax on playing cards.
Did that?
Oh yeah.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah. I took a few. I financed several things in my life. I can tell you stories you wouldn't believe, but anyway. 1975. But anyway, so yeah, they taxed playing cards as well. I mean, that's just a point that it just was almost everything. You know what I'm saying? So now, obviously, all of these licenses we talked about had to bear a stamp showing the tax had been paid. That was the rule. Now, you really have to give Grenville a little bit of credit here because he's kind of appearing as the guy that's being pretty hardcore. He did actually give the colonists a full year to prepare or propose a more acceptable form of taxation. He actually said to them, we're going to tax you, okay? Better get yourself prepared. Now you can either come up with ways we're going to tax you, or I'm going to come up with ways we're going to tax you. So in fairness to Prime Minister George Grenville, he did give the colonists a full year to propose a more acceptable form of taxation rather than the Stamp Act. Does that make sense? He said, we're going to tax you, and I got my plan, you have a year to figure it out. Well, within that year, the colonists did not come up with an alternative. They did not come up with an alternative. So, do you think George Grenville is going to be surprised that they're so angry over this stamp tax? Well, he actually is going to be surprised. He's thinking to himself, well, geez, I gave them a year, and they didn't do anything. So, we're not very happy with this cell phone business, obviously. So, what I'm going to do is, rather than make the rule that we're going to take away your cell phone, and anybody that brings one to school, we're going to throw it as hard as we can against the gym wall. Okay, that's my perspective of it. Okay, that's how I'm going to handle it. But I'm going to give you guys a year to come up with a better alternative than that. And if you can't come up with that alternative, we're going with mine. Well, that's kind of the same type of thing. And that's what they did. Then they complained, well, how come you're throwing my cell phone up against the gym wall? Well, because I gave you a year to figure it out. You didn't do it. So he was kind of surprised that they were so doggone angry about the Stamp Act, because he did give them a year to figure it out. Well, in the end, if you think about it, the Stamp Act took money directly from colonists without their consent. And again, you had 4 different types of groups of people that were really upset with the Stamp Act, okay? And we'll try to figure out who they are. Now, they may be different, they may be the same than the ones that were upset about the proclamation of 1763, but we'll see. Okay, what group of people specifically would be upset about the tax?
Merchants.
Okay, well, you're right. Merchants, now this is only one, this isn't 4, this is the first one. And they all kind of go. Merchants, planters, lawyers, and editors were all upset. That's the first group. I'm going to give you 4 groups of people that were really upset. And the first group are planters, merchants, lawyers, and editors. Why would they get hit so hard? Because what are you paying a tax on? Paper, licenses. Okay, merchants are going to have paperwork. Lawyers are going to have paperwork. Editors of newspapers are really going to get hit, because they're going to get hit not only on the newspapers but the advertising. So if you have a garage sale and you go up and put a sign that says garage sale at Andy Denise's place this week, you had to pay a tax on that before you stuck it on the pole. Okay? So planters, merchants, lawyers, and editors were upset because every time they turned around, they were going to be paying a tax on some sort of license. Okay, who else might be upset? What type of people are advertising? Well, back in those days, we would call them skilled craftsmen. Okay? So if you were a skilled craftsman, you'd be required to pay these direct taxes for paperwork or licenses that you would need in the productions of things you made. And then if you were going to advertise anything to sell, you had to pay tax on that. One thing, you actually had skilled craftsmen that, what they did for a living? They made playing cards. Okay, so when they make playing cards, they got to pay a tax on them. Skilled craftsman is making tables, wooden tables. Well, he's got to pay the money on the tax to get the copyright or patent to do the table. Then he's got to pay to advertise the table. So skilled craftsmen were upset. Farmers were upset. Why would a farmer have to pay a direct tax? Where are they going to pay a direct tax? When they sell and also when they buy, because they're going to have to buy supplies and there's going to be paperwork to that. Do you think that person's going to pass the price on to the farmer? So farmers are upset. Now, settlers are still moving to the frontier, but they're really not moving to much land west of the Appalachians because they've been kicked out, but they're going to make their way back. But where are they going now? If they're going to the frontier, where are they going toward? Toward where? Not way west, toward north, toward Canada. Okay? Now what are they going to pay tax on? Deeds to their land. Okay, and so they're upset. So when you really think about it, it's just going to be a vicious circle, and everybody is going to have to pay taxes. So the Stamp Act hit everybody, because these newspapers, are they going to charge more for their subscription if they're paying tax? Are the skilled craftsmen going to charge more for their goods if they have to pay tax? That's how it works. So really, the Stamp Act was the first act passed by Parliament that just drilled everybody, that got everybody wound up. Now, the British government justified the taxation. They gave two justifications or two reasons why they could do this. They could tax without representation. And the bottom line, I want you to really think about this. What the British government's trying to do, and it really kind of makes sense, is they're not going to afford any special rights to the colonists that their own citizens don't have, right? So this is how they justify this taxation without representation. And one of the ways, that's not one of the reasons, but think about that. What they're saying in essence is, you know, I'm not giving Sully a break that Alexa's not getting. Okay, she's a British citizen living in Great Britain. She's paying taxes. Parliament's making decisions for them. Okay, I'll get to that. But Sully, we're not making anything special for her. So basically, we go back to this statement we talked about before. The first justification of taxation without representation is that the Parliament represented all British citizens. So they're technically claiming that the colonists have a say because what are they in essence? British citizens. Are they independent? No, they are loyal servants of the king. So their first justification is, I don't understand this taxation without representation. You're no different than every other British citizen that lives in Great Britain. You have the same say. The fact that you're not voting because you live 3,000 miles across from the ocean isn't our fault. You chose to go over there. Do you see that justification? If you want to say, come on back. Well, of course, they knew they didn't want to do that. Okay? The second justification is that they said that even some of the citizens that lived within Great Britain were not represented in Parliament, which tells you that not everybody in Great Britain had what? The right to vote. Okay? So what they're saying is, I don't know what you're complaining about in the colonies, there's citizens right here in the mother country that don't have the right to vote. So not everybody in Great Britain's getting a say in the government, so you guys sure as heck aren't going to. You're not getting any special favors. You're British citizens just like everybody else. If you want to vote for members of Parliament, move back to Great Britain. You're British citizens and do it. And we've got people in Great Britain at this time that aren't voting, don't have the right to vote. So we're not going to give you any special treatment that we're not giving people in Great Britain. That was their justification. And it kind of makes sense, right? Because the key to that is they are still British citizens. And how are they going to get rid of being British citizens later in history? They're going to have to revolt and have an American Revolution and win their freedom. That's the only way that's happening. Okay? All right, that'll take us to our next subtopic then, which is obviously opposition to the Stamp Act. Opposition to the Stamp Act. Well, as you can imagine, after the Stamp Act of 1765 was passed, you had all kinds of people mad, but a certain group mad. What do people do when they're mad? What did the Ottawa Indians do when they were mad, Brian? Well, but before that, they banded together. So people will band together, okay? And what happened is these colonial lawyers and these colonial merchants and these publishers, the one that were getting hit the hardest by the Stamp Act, all banded together. And they started protesting and kind of getting the ball rolling on that. And then Colonial Assemblies got involved. And what are Colonial Assemblies again there? Remember what they are there?
It's like their kind of form of government.
It's their form of government. It's like, yes, each colony had their Colonial Assembly, their form of government. Well, the Colonial Assemblies got together and they're thinking to themselves, they're declaring, there isn't any tax legal in the American colonies except those that are levied within colonial assemblies because we have say. So they're basically saying that all of these taxes that are being levied by the British without representation are illegal. So they band together. That's the first thing they do is these colonists band together, certain groups, and then the colonial assemblies declare every tax illegal except for those that colonial assemblies administer. Well, the banding even got more detailed. In October of 1765, when 9 of the 13 colonies picked delegates. 9 of the 13 colonies picked delegates. What are delegates? Anybody know? Like representatives of each colony. So the colony of Georgia, but they weren't involved, but the colony of Virginia picks Rachel Drake and Emily Montgomery to be their delegates. They're going to be their spokesman. So if you got delegates from 9 of the 13, don't you think those delegates are going to get together and discuss this? So do you think all these delegates from the 9 colonies? So in October of 1765, these delegates from 9 colonies all got together in New York City to discuss this taxation without representation problem that was going on. And they held a meeting. And what was the name of the meeting they held in October of 1765?
Oh, isn't it?
Not yet.
Continental Congress?
Well, we haven't got there yet. But look on your ID sheet. What was the name of that meeting? Stamp Act Congress. Well, we're getting to those things you talked about. So in October of 1765, the delegates from 9 colonies all got together in New York City and they held a meeting. And this meeting became known in American history as the Stamp Act Congress. Now, during this meeting, they took 2 important actions. Now, it was kind of interesting, because what's the one thing Parliament's holding over their head why they should pay taxes?
British citizens.
The British citizens, that's exactly right. Now, this seems kind of weird, but the first action that the Stamp Act Congress took is they asserted their loyalty to the king and promised, quote, all due subordination to Parliament. Seems kind of odd, but that's what they did. The first thing the delegates did is they asserted their